Hi, I'm Dr. Allison Stevens, and welcome to the debate. Now, clearly, these are not the actual voices of the First Lady and the President, and the sentiments expressed are based on archives of speeches and writings from them directly. We are going to hear the research-grounded perspectives of these two historical figures on a matter that sits really at the very heart of American identity, that has been a topic of discussion in recent months. It is the principle of birthright citizenship enshrined in the 14th Amendment with a short, powerful sentence: all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. Well, it's been the cornerstone of national unity since Reconstruction. Our central question today is whether this broad, rights-based interpretation should remain the unshakable law of the land, or, if we must revisit its application, in the face of contemporary fiscal pressures and national security concerns. I believe maintaining this pillar is a matter of fundamental justice and equality. Let's start with opening statements. President Reagan?
While I appreciate the idealism inherent in that amendment, we really must ask if the current interpretation, one that grants citizenship regardless of the parent's lawful status, still serves the best interests of the American people and, frankly, the economic health of the nation. I argue that we must find a prudent, common-sense reevaluation of the definition of subject to the jurisdiction, perhaps through executive or legislative action, to safeguard our resources and ensure true national allegiance.
My conviction is that the current understanding of birthright citizenship is, it's essential to the promise of opportunity in this country. It guarantees that everyone born here, simply by virtue of their birth on American soil, possesses an inherent right to dignity, a decent opportunity to live decently, and to develop to the maximum of their abilities unimpeded by the shadow of illegality or the stigma of being an underclass. The Constitution guarantees fundamental equality. When the Supreme Court reviewed this very issue in United States v. Wong Kim Ark back in 1898, it cemented the broad scope of this right, ensuring that the child of immigrant parents, regardless of their parents' ability to become naturalized, was a full citizen. That ruling recognized the profound danger of creating a permanent disenfranchised caste of undocumented resident aliens. To deny birthright citizenship is to fundamentally fray the social fabric we are trying so hard to knit together. It is an attack on the notion that all Americans, by lineage or by birth, are equal under the law.
For our first question, we understand the intent of the 14th Amendment when it was written and passed. Have times changed so drastically that it does not apply? Or should it be interpreted differently?
That broad interpretation, however noble its intent, has regrettably become a magnet for systematic exploitation. We have seen the rise of what is frankly a birth tourism industry, where foreign nationals come to the U.S. solely to give birth. Estimates suggest tens of thousands of such births annually, just to secure immediate citizenship for their child and all the social benefits that come with it. This is not honoring the Constitution. It is gaming the system. This practice is an insult to those who abide by our immigration laws, and it places staggering fiscal burdens on the American taxpayer that simply must be addressed.
Our primary concern, though, must remain the individual child and the moral integrity of our nation. When we strip a child of their citizenship based solely on the administrative status of their parents, we risk rendering them stateless, and the consequences are immense. These individuals are often denied access to basic needs, health care, education, the legal ability to work, which endangers their welfare. We are condemning young people to a shadow existence, forcing them to live perpetually fearful of deportation to countries where they have never lived and whose language they may not even speak. This is fundamentally opposed to the very idea of a civilized society committed to human rights, But if we follow your reasoning, where exactly do we draw the line? Are we really prepared to start demanding proof of allegiance and loyalty from infants? The whole point of the 14th Amendment, especially coming out of the Civil War, was to eliminate the idea that one's status could be dictated by parentage, thereby ensuring equal footing for all Americans, regardless of their family lineage or background. Your narrow interpretation risks creating the very system of tiered citizenship that the amendment was specifically designed to eliminate.
Thank you, Mrs. Roosevelt. Thank you. Let's keep going with the conversation.
I see the ideal, but let us now pivot from the legal definition, if we may, to the consequences we face today. This is fundamentally about fiscal prudence. We must stop feeding the growth of government spending. The current policy imposes staggering costs on local, state, and federal taxpayers. These costs arise because illegal alien-headed households are often able to obtain major federal welfare benefits. Programs like SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or Medicaid, on behalf of their citizen children. These children become the conduit through which billions of dollars flow. This practice effectively subsidizes the cost of living, bearing, and raising children for those who are here unlawfully. We are talking about cumulative annual costs exceeding $10 billion from just those major federal programs, not even mentioning the substantial uncompensated burdens placed on local government services like public hospitals and schools. When local resources are already strained, we simply cannot ignore a policy that drains those budgets further by incentivizing exploitation.
Well, I am not convinced by that line of reasoning because it places the financial burden above the moral and constitutional obligation we owe to these children. And frankly, I must challenge the premise of the data you cite. Are these costs inherently caused by the policy itself? Or are they perhaps a reflection of poverty and lack of access to services that might exist even without birthright citizenship? We have a long history of the Supreme Court cautioning specifically against withholding basic benefits from children in these situations, recognizing, and this is key, that education and health provide the basic tools by which individuals might lead economically productive lives to the benefit of us all. When we deny children access to services, we don't eliminate the cost. We merely shift it. We increase long-term social costs, things like incarceration, chronic illness, lack of productivity, which inevitably impose far greater future burdens on the community. Furthermore, ending birthright citizenship creates an administrative nightmare. Local governments would suddenly lose the simple birth certificate as proof of citizenship and would need to develop entirely new expensive processes to verify status for every public service, further straining those cash-strapped local budgets you want to protect.
Would each of you please address national security as it relates to birthright citizenship?
We must consider the structural integrity of the nation, and that includes national security. I believe that to preserve the peace, we must be strong and vigilant, and our current universal birthright policy is a clear national security risk. It allows individuals with, let's say, divided loyalties to return as adults and exploit their citizenship to infiltrate government or engage in espionage. We see evidence of this when hostile foreign governments advertise priority access to USF government jobs as a benefit of U.S. citizenship acquired through birth tourism. Consider the possibility of disastrous consequences, such as the widely known case of Yasser Hamdi. He was born in the U.S., yes, but his family almost immediately moved to Saudi Arabia. He was raised there and as an adult was apprehended fighting against American forces with the Taliban. Now, he had no meaningful ties to the U.S. beyond the accident of birth. Yet, because of this policy, he was afforded the full constitutional protections of a U.S. citizen, complicating his detention and trial immensely. We cannot overlook this vulnerability.
4. I see the concern, and I agree that vigilance is necessary, but fear should not be the guide for our constitutional interpretation. Policies built upon specters of espionage and divided loyalties particularly against those whose lineage is foreign, lead inevitably to suspicion and repression. I have seen firsthand during periods of anti-communist suspicion how such fear can lead to the creation of a police state atmosphere where people are simply too frightened to express their opinions or participate freely in periods for democracy. The strength of our democracy lies in its trust in the people, and the solution to potential foreign threats is not to curtail the fundamental rights of those born here. We must trust that the vast majority of our citizens, regardless of their parentage, will operate justly and participate fully. To try and solve a national security threat by dismantling a core constitutional right, a right that protects all Americans by virtue of their shared birthright, is a dangerous and disproportionate overreaction. The energy should be placed on strengthening our vetting and counterintelligence operations, not on tearing down the basis of citizenship for millions of people.
And now, we'll move to our final statements. President Reagan, you go first, and we'll let Mrs. Roosevelt close.
We have illuminated a profound tension here. I maintain that the system, as currently interpreted, well, it fails in its duty to protect the sovereign people from untenable fiscal burdens and significant security risks. The issue of divided loyalty is real, and the economic drain is substantial.
5. And I firmly stand by the belief that we must uphold the constitutional assurance that all persons born here are afforded their inherent rights, regardless of parental status. To do otherwise is to risk creating a permanent, disenfranchised underclass that will undermine the very moral authority and indeed the economic potential of our nation.
Justice demands that we ensure the full humanity of all people, especially those residing within our borders. This debate shows that the question of citizenship remains absolutely central to defining who we are as a nation, demanding a critical balancing act between constitutional ideals and the practical realities of modern governance and security. I was particularly motivated by Mrs. Roosevelt's statement that fiscal impacts do not assuage moral obligation. Have you ever wondered what leaders of the past would say about the pressing issues of this unprecedented time? Well, there you have it. First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt and President Ronald Reagan. Can't wait to see who shows up to the next debate.